Hey everyone, my name is James McCool. I'm going to be doing a quick little breakdown for some of the tools over at paydirtdfs.com. Typically, when I do Showdown SZN, it's a written article. It goes over the contest sims as well as the cash game optimals so that we can get a look at kind of what players are being appropriately valued, since that's the most important thing for Showdown. So today I figured I'd do a visual version of that since we have two games. And one, this is nice because it's good content, and two, I don't want to have to write two Showdown seasons. So we're going to be doing this in this way today. If you have not headed over to paydirtdfs.com lately, there's been a little bit of an overhaul to the site. It's very simple. You're not going to find a lot of frills here, but that's just not what I'm about anyway. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the Showdown contest sim first. We're going to be running that for each individual slate, and then we're also going to be looking at some things with cash game optimals. I have all that stuff pulled up so that we don't have to worry about running things. But I've not run any contest sims yet because I wanted to show kind of the process behind using it in this instance. So when you go over into the contest sims, this is what you're going to find. We are going to first select this regular Showdown on DraftKings. I'm not going to do FanDuel because you shouldn't be playing Showdown on FanDuel anyway. So first things first, hit reset sim, hit load reset data. It's going to run a baseline. It's going to pull in some contest frames, and then we're going to run the contest sim. This is a really, really quick process. It runs from the back end, so it's really, really fast. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to come down here and go to captain exposures. We're going to jump this open, and we're going to take a look at some edges. So first things first, Josh Allen is the largest negative edge at captain. His projected ownership there is around 13%. His exposure in the winning frames is only about 2%. James Cook is the second biggest negative edge. Projected ownership at captain around 10%. Exposure in winning frames only 2%. When we take a look at positive edges, we have both kickers, Tyler Bass and Cam Little. Those guys are both coming in around 7 and 4% positive edge. Projected ownership at the captain, less than 5% on both. And then we have a couple other cheaper options, right? We have Brenton Strange, who's going to be really popular, but he's likely not going to be a popular captain. Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr. is a really interesting one, but a lot of these guys are pretty neutral edge, right? So this has been something that we've been looking at over at Paydirt. Cheap captains have been undervalued basically all year. People are trying to jam in the expensive guys, but what we end up seeing happen is that the expensive guys make a lot more sense in the flex rather than in the captain. Reason for that being that you just want to jam in as many of them as you can, and these cheap guys kind of allow that to happen. So algorithmically, it makes sense that we would rather have cheap guys in the captain. Kicker captains, for instance, have been really, really undervalued so far to start the year, and a lot of people have been catching on to that in the last couple of Showdown slates, but they didn't catch on until recently, and they're still probably going to be undervalued. So that's some info about captain. For this one, I think specifically, guys like Brenton Strange and both kickers, those guys are going to be the most undervalued at captain. When we go over to flex, let's jump this open. Let's take a look at edge. So Josh Allen is the top overall edge at flex. Shows up in 92.3% of total winning frames in the flex. His projected ownership in the flex is only about 67%. So quite a bit of edge there. Following him, Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk. We have some Jacksonville guys, and actually you can see that it's basically all Jacksonville guys that are undervalued here. The ownership on Buffalo is just going to be really, really high for this showdown, so makes sense that Jacksonville would be undervalued. And a lot of these guys, 6% undervalued for Brian Thomas Jr., just about 6%, 5.5% for Christian Kirk. That leads us into some pretty easy to use paths, right? We pair those guys up and maybe with Trevor Lawrence, who also is undervalued here, and then bring it back with Josh Allen. And that's a really, really easy way to build for some unique build paths. When we look at negatives, Dalton Kincaid is the largest negative at negative 11.07%, projected at 28%, almost 29%. In the flex, only shows up in 18% of winning lineups from the simulations. Strange makes for a much better captain than he does flex play, but he still shows up in around 16% of flex. James Cook kind of looks like the odd man out here, but I would say negative 3%, that's not really that significant. You're totally fine to play him one way or another. If you wanted to also then look at the actual lineups that are winning and how often they're winning, you can come here. You can see that there's some Brian Thomas, Brenton Strange lineups look really, really good. They do max out the salary as well. I think the ownership is relatively low at 238%, but that's where we jump over into the cash optimals to find out. So what I do is I just load this up, run 100 optimals, and kind of get an idea of where things are going to be. So looking at these top overall cash optimals, the ownership here is really, really low, like 279%. Typically, what we see for showdown slates is somewhere between 290 and 320 in aggregate ownership. So 280%. I would think that the duplications on this slate are going to be really, really low. We probably don't have to worry about them almost at all. So long as you're not building like a cash optimal and throwing in a GPPs, you're probably going to be fine. The flex core that we're seeing here, as in the players that are going to be used by far the most, are Josh Allen and James Cook. Those guys showed up in 100% of cash game optimals in the flex. Those guys are going to be paired up a lot. Avoiding either one of them is going to lower your dupe count by a significant amount. So, say fading James Cook in this showdown, easy way to get different and build in a lot of relative value. After that, you're going to see some Etienne, you're going to see some Shakur, and then after that, man, this is a lot of parity. This is a lot of spread out ownership for a showdown slate. So I don't think you're really going to have to worry about this at all from a dupe mitigation standpoint. What I would say for this showdown, kind of like my overall lean based on everything that we just saw, it's pretty easy to just lock in Josh Allen in the flex and then go with somebody like Brian Thomas Jr., Brenton Strange, one of these Jacksonville cheaper guys, and just lock them into the captain. I think that leaning into the Jacksonville side is going to give you a lot of extra relative value here. And you don't even really have to force too many things since the contest sims don't really like James Cook. That's kind of like a very clear way to get different on this slate. So lock in Josh Allen in the flex, have a lean towards the Jacksonville side, be looking to utilize guys like Strange, Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, kind of look for those kinds of things and just stay away from James Cook. And I think that you're good on this first showdown. So now let's reset the sim, jump over into the secondary, load reset data, and then we can run the second one. So this one is going to be for Cincinnati, Washington. And look at that, we broke. Oh no, that's not good. Okay, well, we'll come back to that here in a second. And we are back. Here is the second overall showdown slate. So what happened, I just had to switch and make a quick switch over to one of the other buttons, and then that fixed it. So what we're looking at here, we'll go through the same kind of process. Let's go take a look at captain exposures. Jump this up. Take a look at positive edges. Again, we have both kickers. Those guys have been undervalued all year. That's going to be no change here. And then Zach Ertz, and really interesting, the Cincinnati Bengals actually look like a strong captain in this one. Models are not high on Washington. They think Cincinnati wins this one pretty easily. And using the Cincinnati Bengals defense and captain, probably going to be a really interesting, different way to go about this slate. When we are looking at negative edges offered in captain, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, and mostly expensive options, right? So the expensive options are, again, going to be overvalued here just based on how often they show up. But the main one's going to be Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow. And the reason for that is that you want to use them in the flex where you can afford to stack together more of them than just having them in the captain. So let's jump over and take a look at the flex exposures now. Sort by positive edge. So Jaden Daniels is the top overall edge. Projected ownership 52% in the flex. Exposure and winning lineups around 68%. So plus 16% edge, give or take. Joe Burrow is the second highest. And then we also see that Jamar Chase, again, is a better play in the flex here. Still not great, neutral, but still positive, right? And then we have Zach Moss and Evan McPherson being positive edges allowed. Worth noting that a lot of this is Cincinnati side. Like the contest sims are basically saying that this is a Cincinnati 5-1 slate, maybe a Cincinnati 4-2. If you just go with a Cincinnati 5 stack with Jaden Daniels in the flex, that's a very easy way to build here. Some negative values here. So the top overall negative edges offered in the flex are going to be Chase Brown, Mike Gesicki, and Andre. I have no idea how to pronounce his last name. And there's a lot of Cincinnati players here too, but it's all kind of the secondary guys, right? Like we have the best players up here for Cincinnati. You know, Joe Burrow, Zach Moss, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, like the players that are actually going to be used. Those ones are the ones that are undervalued, and just utilizing all of them to the best of their ability, and in the flex and combining them the best you can. That's going to be the way to go for this one specifically. Let's jump on over here, do the same kind of analysis on the optimals. So here, see, we have this ownership range of 300 to 320. This is going to be a normal amount of dupes. Not anything excessive. Like when we pass that 320 mark, that's when excessive dupes start to show up. But 315 is relatively fine. You are still going to have to worry a little bit about the way that you are putting together your lineups, though. You're going to have to find some different ways to introduce relative value. The main flex combo here is going to be Zach Moss, Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase. Those guys show up in 97, 97, 94% of total lineups in the cash optimals. And then you can mix in Jaden Daniels and T. Higgins. So those 5 are going to be the main guys that you see. After that, total randomness, like total buckshot. Nobody else over 10% exposed in the cash optimals. So long as you are off of one of those top 5 guys, you know, off of T. Higgins, off Jaden Daniels, off Jamar Chase, off Joe Burrow, so long as you're off one of those guys when you're building your lineups, you don't got to worry about duplications. Especially if you go with the Bengals defense, then what you can do is you do Bengals defense with like Zach Moss, Jamar Chase, Jaden Daniels, T. Higgins, fade Joe Burrow. And then that's going to give you a really interesting and unique perspective on the slate and lower your dupes by quite a bit. So that is how we end up doing these breakdowns. That's how I end up writing the Showdown seasons as well. Overall notes for this one. I mean, I already buried the lead, but the contest sims are very clear that this is a Cincinnati-oriented slate, right? Like the Cincinnati main players are the ones that are being undervalued, and you should just be trying to force in as many of them as you can. The way to do that is probably with Cincinnati Bengals defense. There's a really easy way to go either a 5-1 or a 4-2 that has Jaden Daniels in the flex and like, I don't know, one of maybe Evan McPherson, or no, not Evan McPherson. Who's the kicker for the, man, why can I not speak right now? Austin Seibert. If you use the kicker and Jaden Daniels in the flex, like that's probably a great way to build. So this has been how we break down the Showdown seasons. Again, if you don't know me, my name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. If you have any questions, reach out either in the Discord, free to join. There's a link on the site, or on Twitter. You can do that as well. But I hope that you guys collect some trophies and let me know how everything goes. See you later.